Labour pledges to renationalise most rail services within 5 years. Well, they're saying that, and within 5 years? So maybe they'll do it at the very end of their first term?
Yeah, so what's happening is that there are many different private franchises that have been broken up across the country, and the government pays an exorbitant amount of money to keep them running. So, I mean, it's around £4 billion a year that we hand over to these private rail companies, and they're still handing over money to their shareholders, even if they've been giving you delays all year, even if they've run a pretty substandard service, that they're still profiting. And it's time for that to end. So when these contracts end with the Department for Transport, Labour are saying that they will actually bring them into public ownership, which a lot of them actually already are in. So if you look at LNER, I think I was talking about this yesterday.
Yeah,
that is actually government run at the moment. That is actually in the Ombudsman's hands.
And it's running better?
Running significantly better.
Well, Hugh Merriman, the Rail Minister, said the plans are pointless and unfunded. I feel like a lot of what Starmer says at the moment is unfunded.
Can I just say, though, to, Hugh Merriman, I'm sorry, but, where is your £4 billion coming from that you're handing over to these private rail firms every year? What money is that coming from? What pot is that coming from?
Well, how much is it going to cost us to buy out all of these rails? More than $4 billion.
OK,
right?
but also this plan actually, I would say, is not ambitious enough. So what they're going to do is they're going to bring the companies back into public control, but it will still mean that the actual carriages that they're using, the actual trains, those are still going to be, quote unquote, rented. So a lot of those are supplied by Europe. So we hand over a lot of money over to Italy and to the Netherlands to basically borrow their trains.
Right.
And until you bring that into public control, you're not actually going to see a proper service.
What about strikes? How can they avoid the strikes if we own them? People will still be able to strike. Are they going to just say, all right, everyone gets a pay rise, everyone gets job security for life? You don't want to have less people at your station? Fine. The train's running on time though. Costs us more money, but it's okay.
I think there's probably a better argument against job security with strikes when a company is under one umbrella rather than being lots of different small pockets of companies. Because if a private company wants to save a bit of cash and it wants to give more over to its shareholders, the first thing they do is cut staff, right? That's a pretty obvious cost-cutting measure. If you're not able to do that because something is government-run, then that eliminates any need for a strike in the first place, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's like having jobs for the sake of having jobs then. Some like if you go to Dubai, for example, I don't know if you've been there, their trains operate with just one person. Everything is automated.
That's because people aren't heathens over there. Let's be honest.
True.
Have you tried to get on a train at Euston any time recently, or tried to get on a train at Manchester Piccadilly? I'm not being funny, but there'll be a little old lady there. You think, oh, she's gentle. She will get your umbrella out. She will beat you for the last seat on that train.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, Ava. What's our next story?
So we're staying with Labour, actually, and this is about Labour apparently failing to keep Britain safe in a dangerous world. Now, so this is off the back of the defence spending that we were talking about yesterday with Rishi Sunak. He announced 2.5%. The party hasn't completely committed. It hasn't kneeled down and say, yes, we will commit to 2.5% spending, because what Labour are arguing at the moment is until they actually see the books in the Treasury, they're not going to commit to huge expenditure. And actually, it was a bit of a red herring yesterday, because if you look at the polling, you could make quite a good case that the Conservatives aren't going to be in government after the general election, right? I don't think that's that's a pretty obvious point here.
Not a wild thought.
And setting this kind of high expenditure, it's sort of like a minefield for Labour. You're salting the earth, and you're hoping to possibly trip them up when they get into government, because then they'll be saddled with these huge costs that will basically hinder their ability to spend anything on, I don't know, public services.
Yeah.
So, again, this story really is about tripping up Starmer than it is actually about whether or not they're keeping us safe.
But essentially, Labour are just practising responsible spending, aren't they? They're saying we will do 2.5% of GDP on defence if our resources are OK at the time. We have to see when we get there, which to me makes sense. That's the best way of doing it.
Do you think a lot about defence spending?
I don't, to be honest. And I know that my local constituency, not the one in London, the one back in the Midlands, in Dudley, for them, it is, number one, local jobs, number two, roads, number three, transport, local transport services, buses, etc., and then the NHS. Defence isn't even in the top 10 of issues for people in my local constituency. I don't think it's for most people. I know we've got the Ukraine war and we've got Israel-Gaza, but for most people, they'd rather see money back in their own pockets.
Yeah, well, we don't actually contribute a lot to Israel-Gaza, do we? A lot of the money is going to to Ukraine. And I guess because we're not actually looking at a war in our face, you know, a war isn't happening in the UK. I think it's very difficult to convince people that, oh, I'm really sorry, we're not going to actually be able to allocate you free school meals because we need to actually send ballistic missiles to Ukraine.
Precisely.
It's a hard sell.
It is a hard sell.